My name is Martha Ellison. I'm 68 years old, a former school media specialist, and a mother to one son, Daniel. I've spent most of my days arranging stacks, repairing torn pages, and murmuring to children that they can grow into whoever they imagine, so long as they keep reading. But no novel I ever opened, no lesson I ever taught, prepared me for the sentence that would come out of my future daughter-in-law's mouth. Not in my boldest pages. It happened the day before their wedding. I remember it with a clarity that stings. Like ink pressed too firmly into the page, you can still feel the groove after the words have faded. I was in their dining room, folding linen napkins. White, soft cotton, the sort that wrinkle if you simply breathe near them. Lila wanted swan folds. I'd watched 3 YouTube tutorials to get them passable. Daniel was upstairs being measured for his tux. The house smelled of vanilla candles and new paint. I stood at the table lining up the last set when I heard heels behind me. I turned. Lila wore her rehearsal dress, pearl gray silk, hair in loose waves. Flawless. She didn't smile. She looked at me, through me, and said, in the calmest register I'd ever heard from her, "The greatest gift for our wedding would be if you disappeared from this family." That is exactly what she said. Not suggested, not hinted. Disappear. I didn't flinch, but my fingers trembled around the final napkin. I felt it crush under my palm. She didn't wait for a reply. She kept going. This weekend is meant to be about love and joy, not strain. And honestly, your presence complicates things. That's when Daniel walked in. My son, my only child. The boy who once wept because he thought I forgot his 6th birthday. Who once asked if I'd sit beside him during fire drills because the alarms were too loud. He saw us, saw the silence, and instead of asking what was wrong, rubbed the back of his neck. "It's probably for the best, Mom. You've been tense lately." Tense? I stood there, my gaze moving between their faces. Neither looked furious. They looked finished, as though I had already been dismissed and this was the paperwork. I said nothing. I looked at the table at the single chipped teacup, mine, from that morning. White porcelain rimmed with faded blue, a gift from my husband on our 25th anniversary. Thomas used to say it looked delicate but held heat like stone. It sat before me now, half full of forgotten tea cooling by the second. I picked it up, steady this time, and walked out. No speech, no plea, no how could you, just steps. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. I packed my things quietly. No fuss, no slammed doors. I didn't sigh loudly hoping someone would follow. They didn't. And when I closed the door, my own son's door, I whispered, not to them, but to myself. They asked me to disappear. So I did, but not without taking back what still belonged to me. They assumed I left meekly. They had no idea what was coming. Not yet. The hotel room was small, the kind that tries too hard to feel cozy. Patterned curtains, a faux leather armchair, 2 forlorn chocolates on the nightstand. But it was clean, still, and tonight it was mine. I set the chipped teacup on the table by the window. It didn't match anything there. Its edges were too worn, its story too long for a place like this. Still, it sat, like me. The clock read 9:47 p.m., too early to sleep, too late to start anything new. So I sat. I tightened the robe around my shoulders and watched my reflection in the glass. Outside, headlights drifted. Inside, I didn't move. My face looked unfamiliar, tired, but not defeated. Just finished. I used to believe if I loved hard enough, people wouldn't leave. That kindness poured steady as tea would keep them close. That certainty began with Daniel. When Thomas, my husband, died, I remember lying in our bed with Daniel pressed to my chest. He was 9. He didn't cry at the service, not once. But that night he could not stop. He sobbed until he hiccuped. I didn't know what to do. So I went to the kitchen and made tea the way Thomas did. Strong, 2 sugars, a splash of milk. I poured it into that same chipped cup, the one he'd bought me on our 25th, from a roadside shop in New Hampshire. He said it looked like me, simple, sturdy, soft at the edges. I couldn't decide whether to be flattered or offended. I sat beside Daniel and handed him the cup. He didn't drink, just held it with both hands, warmth sitting between his fingers, still crying. Then he asked a question that splits something inside you. Are we still a family? I looked him in the eye and said, yes. As long as we take care of each other, we'll always be a family. He nodded, set the teacup down, and fell asleep on my shoulder. I stayed awake all night. I didn't know how I'd pay the mortgage or keep the lights on, but I knew I'd find a way. That's what mothers do. Hold the walls up until our hands bleed, patch the roof with pieces of ourselves, become the ground they walk on until they forget we're there. The hotel lamp flickered. The heater coughed on. I thought of Lila's face, composed, entitled, and of Daniel's eyes when she spoke those words. How he didn't argue, didn't reach for me, didn't even say goodbye. My child, the one who once cried into my cardigan asking if we were still a family. I'd answered too quickly then, because now I wasn't sure. I touched the cold window with my palm. The night was quiet. No one knew that hours earlier I had been erased, not shouted at, not thrown out, just gently erased. That sort of hurt doesn't bruise. It lingers under the skin, soft and sour. My eyes landed on the teacup again. A faint crack traced one side, hard to see unless you knew where to look. Still whole, still useful, still mine, like me. I lifted it and breathed. Yes, we're still a family, just not the same kind anymore. I took a sip. 3 years earlier, I'd sat in a bank, palms sweating. The teller slid over the withdrawal form, and the number stared up like a final goodbye. $92,000. Every penny of my retirement. Every hour since Daniel was small. Every skipped vacation. Every coupon clipped. Every time I told myself, it's all right, Martha. This can wait. But it wasn't just money. It was belief. Belief that if I gave enough, I would never be treated like a burden. That if I poured love as sacrifice, I would get care in return. Daniel had been elated that day, his hand trembling as he held Lila's. We found the house, Mom. It's in Maple Ridge. Lila loves the garden. There's even a sunroom, perfect for you to read. Lila smiled politely but didn't meet my eyes. The plan sounded straightforward. I'd help with the down payment. They'd take the mortgage. I'd have the in-law suite. Our home, 3 generations, like the old days. But when I pulled out the file of documents my husband Thomas had meticulously labeled, I hesitated. I called Marina Cole, Thomas's former law partner, sharp, unsentimental, always 2 steps ahead. Martha, she said, you need something in writing, even with your son, especially with your son. Make sure your name is on the title or, at minimum, a loan agreement. I repeated that to Daniel, carefully. He chuckled and shook his head. Mom, paperwork? You think I'm going to kick you out? We're family. You'll always have a place with us. We don't need to sign anything. This isn't business. It's home. That word again, home. And I, like a fool, folded. I tucked Marina's number into my wallet and didn't call back. I nodded, signed the check, and whispered, "This is love." Looking back, I wonder, was it? Because love doesn't smirk at dinner when you ask why your name isn't on the mailbox. Love doesn't look away when you mention feeling like a guest in the house you helped buy. Love doesn't call your vintage tea set junk when you try to place it in the sunroom. Your sunroom. Weeks after I moved in, I learned the in-law suite wasn't being built. Plans changed. Lila needed an art studio. Daniel forgot to mention it. I took the small back guest room instead. They'd installed blinds so tight they barely let the day in. The sunroom stayed locked when Lila wasn't home. I told myself, temporary, they're stressed. Young couples need space. What I couldn't say aloud was this. $92,000 wasn't unconditional love. It was trust. And I had nothing proving that trust had ever existed. No name on the deed, no clause, no contract. Just a quiet mother's assumption that her presence would be enough. That's the problem with unspoken agreements. They only hold as long as the people do. Now, sitting in that dim motel room, the one I'd passed 100 times walking to the grocery, I finally understood. They didn't betray me the day they told me to stay away from the wedding. The betrayal started earlier. It began when they smiled and asked me to trust them while quietly removing every legal footprint I might leave behind. What they didn't know was that I never threw away Marina's number. It was tucked behind my expired AARP card. I stared at the popcorn ceiling as streetlight shadows slid across it. I didn't cry or toss and turn. I waited, and when the sky softened toward dawn, I did what I should have done 3 years prior. I called Marina, voicemail first. 2 minutes later, my phone lit up. "Martha?" she asked, groggy, concerned. "Everything all right?" "I need you to check the title for Daniel and Lila's house," I said, "the one I wired $92,000 toward." A pause. "You're finally asking me to do what I suggested back then, huh?" "Yes." Papers rustled. Her voice sharpened. "If I recall, you never removed your name from the co-ownership language. Daniel handled paperwork, but Lila never signed the quitclaim deed. Let me verify." I exhaled and stared at the ceiling. I remembered Daniel brushing off paperwork. "We're family. It's your home, too. Always." 5 minutes passed. "Your name is still on the deed," Marina said. "Legally, you're a co-owner." "I want to initiate a partition action," I said before she could finish. She paused. "Are you sure, Martha?" "I'm not retaliating," I said, level. "I'm reclaiming what's mine." Silence. Not judgment, not surprise, just understanding. "I'll prepare the filings," Marina said. "We'll move for a forced sale. As co-owner, and with no formal joint occupancy agreement, you can dissolve the shared ownership and demand your portion in cash." I sat up. My back ached. My legs were stiff. My mind was clear. "Do you want to wait until after the wedding?" she asked. "No. Let them have their picture-perfect weekend. When the court order lands on their doorstep, I want it to be the first surprise they didn't stage." "Understood. I'll file within 48 hours. I ended the call and stood. A weak stripe of morning light crept through the cheap blinds, dust drifting in it. I didn't feel vengeful, raging, or even sad. I felt done. After years of softening my voice, shrinking my needs, and paying to keep the peace, I finally understood something simple. People don't remember the foundation, only the show built on top of it. Maybe it was time to let the house fall. I poured motel coffee, bitter, overbrewed, and drank it like a small ceremony. Daniel once asked if I'd ever leave him. "Never," I'd said then. "Even if the house collapsed, I'd stay with you in the rubble." But the house hadn't just fallen. It had collapsed on top of me, and I was crawling out. By sunrise, I'd made my decisions. 1 cup of tea, 1 steady breath, and I was ready. My first call was to the venue coordinator. "Hi, this is Martha Ellison. I need to cancel the booking under my name for the 22nd. She sounded startled. The wedding? But everything's arranged, paid in full. Are you certain? Yes, I said. Certain. Next came the florist, then the string quartet, then catering and the photographer. Every contract was under my name, negotiated by me, secured with my checks. Each one canceled, refunded, or formally terminated within the hour. No one argued. They'd all dealt with me. Not Lila, not Daniel, me. I left a measured voicemail for the planner, a gentle, capable woman who'd always treated me decently, even when Lila barked about details. There's been a change in the family. The couple may still proceed, but everything contracted through me. Venue, florals, food, music is no longer funded on my side. I wish them well. Then I packed. No boxes, no luggage mountain. A single weekender bag, a few essentials, a photograph of Thomas, and the chipped teacup wrapped in a dish towel. I didn't go upstairs to say goodbye. They were sleeping, or pretending to. People who choose cruelty rarely meet the consequences head on. Before I stepped out, I looked once more at the dining table. That's where it happened, where Lila delivered the sentence that still echoed. You're not tasteful enough to sit with his family. Funny how a handful of syllables can shatter you, and how, when you pick up the pieces, you discover some shards were never worth saving. I unfolded a slip of paper I'd written in the early light. In steady handwriting, you asked me to disappear. This is me disappearing, with my name, my money, and my dignity. I set it where she had been seated beside her untouched glass. Not a letter, not a farewell, a mirror. I closed the front door softly. No slam, no tears, just the clean click of a latch. My car was parked down the block, not in the driveway. No spectacle. Let them wake and wonder. On the way to the hotel, I passed the bakery that had started on their 5-tier red velvet cake. Paid in full, canceled. I felt no guilt. Lila made her choice. Daniel watched in silence. I responded in kind. I checked in under an alias, unpacked, and made tea. The chipped cup warmed my hands as the skyline blued. I didn't replay scenes or draft speeches. I breathed and reclaimed a small square of air that was mine. They wouldn't understand it now. Maybe not for years. But sometimes walking away isn't defeat. It's the most generous act left, especially when the silence you leave behind echoes in every room you used to hold together. I spent the night at a quiet inn. Lemon soap, cedar drawers. For the first time in weeks, I inhaled without bracing. My phone buzzed endlessly. I let it hum. By morning, there were 12 missed calls from Daniel, 5 from Lila, and a couple of unknown numbers. Vendors. I poured tea and listened to the first voicemail. Daniel clipped. Mom, call me back. What's going on? You canceled the venue. What are you trying to prove? Delete. Lila's voice. Syrup over ice. Hi, Martha. There must be some mistake. Please call the planner and fix it. Another ping. Okay, this is getting out of control. You canceled the band. The florist says you told them the wedding isn't happening. That's not your call. Then, this is sabotage. You're ruining everything. 200 guests, the dress, the cake. Do you understand what you've done? I watched robins hop through hydrangeas. Another message. Daniel again. We can't get into the house. The keys don't work. Are you there? Are you okay? Of course they couldn't get in. Marina had already changed the locks after service of notice. I'd left copies of filings with the planner's assistant with a neat note. Please direct further questions to my attorney. One more voicemail. Lila's tone shifted, brittle. I didn't mean forever. I thought you'd still do what's best for Daniel. You always do. Please, Martha, call me. The slide from indignation to pleading was almost textbook. Not funny, just tragic. They assumed I'd bend, mop the mess, fix what pride had broken. They had no idea what it cost to finally say no. An ache bloomed anyway, the tiny part that longed to hear, "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that." Or simply, "I miss you." It didn't come. The last message was Daniel's, voice frayed. "Mom, please, just tell me you're safe." I looked at the phone for a long time. Then I powered it off. The knock came at sunset. I was by the window of the modest suite, lukewarm chamomile in hand, quiet wrapped around me. I wasn't expecting anyone. The calls had stopped, shame settling in. I hadn't anticipated Caroline, Lila's mother. She stood at the door with immaculate hair, a strand of pearls, and a bottle of wine, the kind you bring when words fail. "Martha," she said softly, eyes heavy. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. She moved like a person entering a chapel, careful, reverent. "I didn't raise her to be cruel," Caroline began, voice low. "But I never taught her how to lose either. That might be my failure." Honesty, unvarnished. She twisted the cork but didn't drink. Lila usually got what she wanted. When she didn't, she found a villain. Often me. I said nothing. She continued. "I heard what she said to you, and what she did. I'm ashamed." For a moment I saw my own reflection in her, quiet endurance, the endless urge to glue families back together as they split from the inside. "You don't have to apologize for her," I said. "She made her choices. She'll live with them." Caroline's eyes glossed. She blinked it back. I spent half my life apologizing for my daughter, smoothing the chaos. After what she did, I can't do it anymore. She reached into her purse and slid a check across the table, my name typed cleanly, 5 digits. "This won't fix anything, but let me help." "No," I said. "Martha, no," firmer. "This isn't yours to mend, and it isn't about money." Her shoulders softened. No offense, only respect. I wanted to do something. "You did," I said. "You came. You told the truth." Caroline laughed once, dry, sad. "When Lila was 12, she screamed at me in a department store because I wouldn't buy a leather jacket. 'You're ruining my life.' I cried in the car. I should have let her meet disappointment sooner. Maybe then she'd know what grace looks like." "She still can," I said, "but that's on her." "Do you think she understands what she's lost?" "Not yet. She will. People like her don't see the hole until they're at the bottom." Caroline stood. "You're not alone in this." "I know," I said. "Thank you for coming." At the door she turned. "You were a good mother to him. I hope when the dust settles, Daniel sees that." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to add. She returned at dawn, a long white envelope in hand. "You said no, but I couldn't sleep." She set it down. 40,000, a cashier's check. Cover what you canceled. Let them marry without scandal. Outside, a garbage truck rumbled. Life kept moving, indifferent to weddings and mothers. "Why do you want this so badly?" I asked. "Because I'm tired of pretending she's fine. Because I enabled this. I thought love meant smoothing every edge. I'm trying to repair what I broke." The envelope was cool and heavy, paper that always imagines it can solve anything. The number sat like a brick. $40,000. Enough to pave over a weekend, not a lifetime. "Money won't teach what humility can," I said. "Let them learn the cost of forgetting where they came from." "You'd let guests go hungry? Let my friends think we're broke?" "I'd let them face themselves." A quiet settled. Air unit hum. Teaspoon clink. "I'm not your enemy," I added. "I'm a woman who paid for 3 years to pretend. I'm done pretending." "Then keep the check for you," she whispered. "A thank you." I shook my head. Gratitude isn't a debt I plan to collect. I held the check in both hands. The paper resisted, then yielded. A neat tear slid through the zeros with a hush that sounded like mercy. I halved it again, white confetti without celebration. Caroline didn't gasp or snatch. She watched, another mother witnessing the price of lessons learned late. I set the shreds in the saucer. No triumph, only stillness that felt like truth. I won't step between your daughter and consequence, I said. I understand, she replied, and left. I carried the torn pieces to the trash, washed my hands, opened my notebook, and wrote a single line. Refusing rescue isn't revenge, it's release. Then I powered on my phone and texted Marina. Proceed with the filing. The tea had cooled, but it was honest. I drank to that. The documents arrived by courier. Thick envelope, dark suit, neutral expression. I opened it the way I used to open Daniel's report cards, careful, bracing for a truth I couldn't edit. There it was in black and white, my name, firm and unignorable, on the deed. Marina had been right. Lila never signed anything. Daniel skimmed the terms and called it family. In their rush to claim everything, they overlooked the simplest fact. I was still a co-owner. Years of invisibility inside that house, a legal line that never erased me. Invisible in life, undeniable in law. I called Marina. You received the papers? She asked, brisk. I did, I said, palm on the deed. So it's true. It is. They can't sell without you. More importantly, you're entitled to petition for a forced sale. Messy for them, clean for you. I traced the line where my name sat. Martha Ellison. Present. Counted. If you want to proceed, she said, I'll need your signature. Once filed, notice goes out within 48 hours. I listened to the hum of the desk lamp, muffled hallway laughter, a couple arguing next door, life rolling forward while mine balanced on the tip of a pen. I thought of 9-year-old Daniel whispering, Don't leave me, Mom. I thought of Lila standing in my kitchen yesterday, telling me I was the greatest burden her marriage could carry. I thought of myself, quiet in corners, swallowing humiliation and calling it love. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm just finished explaining my worth. Then sign, Marina replied, softer. I did, stroke by stroke, my name carved into a decision. For the first time in years, my hand didn't shake. I'll handle the rest, she said. Service soon. After the call, a strange calm settled. This wasn't punishment. It was truth, finally written where it counts. A knock I recognized before I heard it, Daniel's rhythm. He stood in yesterday's shirt, eyes red, hair uncombed. The polished confidence had drained out. Mom, Lila is unraveling. Guests are calling. The planner quit. People think we're broke. They think you're cruel. He swallowed. I told them you aren't. I folded my hands and waited. Silence did what I used to do with words. Please don't sell the house, he said. Do anything to me. Just don't take the house. The old reflex rose. To save what he loved. I let it pass. We can fix this, he rushed. We'll apologize at the reception. We'll say it was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, I said. There was a moment of clarity. You're angry. I'm done explaining. His eyes flicked to my small suitcase, the teacup, the envelope stamped by the court. He saw it and looked away. What is that? Reality. He met my gaze at last. Please, give us time. We'll refinance. We'll put your name on. My name was never gone, I said. You would know that if you'd read what you signed. His mouth opened, then closed. Confusion, then collapse. He slid out the first page. My name in bold did the rest. You're a co-owner, he whispered. I am, and I filed to partition the property. He looked struck. He sank to the edge of the bed, suddenly 9 again, small, afraid. Are we still a family? The memory moved through me and out. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because when I spoke, you didn't listen. Because in your house, I was a guest. You tolerated me. Because you thought love meant I would never use my options. He rubbed his forehead. Lila won't survive this. She will. People survive what they cause. The lesson is afterward. You don't have to do this, he tried, and I don't have to keep paying for your lessons. He stepped closer, palms open. I'll go to the bank. I'll ask Caroline to help. I'll sell my car. Please, give me a month. If you don't remember who built that house, I said evenly, maybe you don't deserve to keep it. He closed his eyes like the words stung. You built it, he said, barely audible. No, I paid for its beginning. You were supposed to build it with respect. He deflated. What do you want from me? Accountability and distance until you can offer it. He nodded slowly, like learning to walk on uneven ground. If I bring you a plan, will you hear it? I'll listen, I said. I won't rescue. He folded the papers and set them back in the envelope carefully, reverence arriving late, but arriving. At the door. Are you safe? Yes, I said, for the first time in a long time. 2 days later, an unmarked envelope slid under my hotel door. Inside, one photograph, a newborn swaddled in a hospital blanket, fists curled, eyes closed. On the back, in uneven ink, her name is Martha. For everything you did, even when we didn't deserve it. My chest forgot how to breathe, then remembered all at once. My name, stitched into a life I hadn't met. A confession more powerful than any voicemail. They could erase me from guest lists, move my chair for a plant, lock the sunroom, cancel my presence. But they had given a child my name. Whatever else I had lost, that truth stood. I pressed the photo to my heart and let the soft rain of tears arrive. Not bitter, just clean. I traced the tiny face with a fingertip and whispered a prayer for a girl who would, I hoped, learn grace sooner than her parents. I wrote in my notebook beneath the day's date, a name isn't easily erased when it's carved in sacrifice. That night, I asked the dark questions that line up when the music stops. Should I forgive? Should I go back? Should I salvage what they fractured? I saw Lila practicing apologies and Daniel deciding I should shrink again. I set the photograph beside my chipped cup and felt the tremor subside. If I went back, what would I teach the child who shares my name? That love requires a woman to erase herself to stay? That a mother deserves a seat only while she is paying? No. I opened the curtains. Dawn thinned the night to pearl. Somewhere a bakery mixed batter, a florist trimmed stems, a planner redrew timelines that once leaned on my quiet yes. None of them knew the cost of each yes. I lifted the photo upright against the lamp. The baby's face glowed, a small moon with my name. Little one, I whispered, may you keep your kindness and your edges. May you never learn love as debt. When the tea was ready, I let the steam rise and thought of Thomas, his hand on my shoulder. Choose the path that keeps you whole. I thought of the friend I admired from afar, Ruth Avery, and the sentence she'd once gifted me like a bell. Sometimes walking away is the most generous thing we can do. I wasn't punishing them. I was preserving myself. I wrote one more line, hold the boundary, keep the heart. And I let the room grow honest and still. Weeks passed. The petition advanced. Court dates loomed. And for the first time in decades, my days weren't consumed with fixing other people's chaos. I met Marina on a Monday morning. The conference room smelled of copier toner and coffee. She slid a folder thick with filings toward me, tabs like flags. I read each page slowly, the way I once read picture books aloud to children, deliberate, steady. When I reached the last page, I pressed my palm on the cover. "I'll sell my share," I said. "No discounts, no favors. If they can buy at fair value by the deadline, good. If not, list the property." Marina's pen moved across her legal pad. "You're choosing clarity. I respect that." "I'm choosing a life that's mine." We signed. Outside, autumn leaves drifted in swirls. My hands, burned from holding rope too long, finally felt free. That evening, I drove to a community on the edge of town. Wide sidewalks, west-facing porches. The director, Alma, showed me a library with tall windows, a citrus courtyard, a quilting room filled with women in circles of quiet laughter. "You look like a reader," she said. "I'm also a teacher." Her smile widened. "We always need both." I rented a corner unit, narrow balcony, just enough room for a table, one chair, and a clay pot for a lemon tree. That night I brewed tea, set the chipped cup on the railing, and watched the sun fold itself behind the roofs. By Thursday, I'd signed up to mentor at a literacy program for girls aging out of foster care. I met 3 teens, Lena, Harper, and Shay. At first, guarded, quick words, tough fronts, but stories are patient. Lena traced sentences with her finger, whispering each syllable. Harper doodled anchors in the margins when she understood a clause. Shay pretended she didn't care, then stayed late every time. I taught them how to find the subject of a sentence. They taught me how to stand in a room without apologizing for taking space. When we finished our first book, we celebrated with powdered sugar lemon bars from the corner bakery. Shay asked about my teacup. "Why's it cracked?" "Because it's been well loved," I said. She nodded like I'd told her a secret she already knew. At night, I wrote letters to myself. Not affirmations, records. Bills I no longer paid for others. Hours I gave to girls who needed a witness. The way my breath felt steady when I woke. Daniel emailed 2 drafts of financing plans. I forwarded them to Marina with a single sentence: "Submit to council." The 3rd draft arrived with numbers that finally balanced. Still, I didn't rush to reply. Boundaries work best without applause. 30 days moved like tidewater, steady, indifferent to who begged it to return. On the final morning, Marina called. "Funds cleared. Your share will wire today." I thanked her and set the phone down beside the lemon tree. The transfer chimed into my account like a bell. Not fortune, freedom. I didn't buy extravagance, just a sturdy pair of walking shoes, a year of bus passes, fresh notebooks, and a bookshelf for the girls' paperbacks. I prepaid a room at the community center for Saturday sessions. That night I stood on my balcony, watching porch lights blink on one by one, warm squares against the dark, proof that life kept going, not triumph. Placement. I whispered, "Thank you," to Alma, to Marina, to the girls, and to the woman I finally chose to become. Wind rustled the lemon leaves, clean and nearly sweet. I lifted my cup and let the steam curl upward. Somewhere, a reception limped forward without me. Somewhere, a child with my name slept, unaware of the soil tilled on her behalf. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow waited, and this time it would be mine. The air in Marigold Bay was different, salt water and lavender, sunlight and rest. Mornings began with a walk along the shoreline where gulls carved freedom into the sky. No one here knew who I had been, only who I decided to be. I woke early, not because duty yanked me from bed, but because I wanted to. My knees ached. My back reminded me of its years, but it didn't matter. The little blue cottage I rented was filled with things that belonged only to me. Books I loved, a whistling teapot, paintings from the market, roses and daisies planted by my own hand. They bloomed wildly, almost as if trying to make up for years of silence. One afternoon, I sat on the porch sipping peppermint tea. A group of children passed, laughter trailing. One little girl stopped, curls framing her wide eyes. "Are you somebody's grandma?" she asked shyly. I smiled. "I suppose I am, to some people." "Do they live here?" "No," she frowned. "Aren't you lonely without family?" Once, that question would have gutted me. Now I smiled again and patted the seat. She climbed up, legs swinging. "Family isn't just who shares your blood," I told her. "It's where people remember your name, not where they ask you to forget yourself just to fit in." She blinked, uncertain, but I saw the seed planting itself. "My mom says I talk too much." "Maybe the world needs more voices," I said softly. She grinned, teeth too big for her mouth, then hopped down. "I'll remember that." Her laughter trailed as she ran. Peace settled in my chest, not peace from apologies or fixing things, but peace born from no longer needing either. That evening, barefoot on the beach, the waves kissed my ankles, and the sun painted gold across the water. I thought of the garage I once opened, the map tucked away by Thomas, and how it had led not only to money but to freedom. Every sunrise now belonged to me. Every photo on my wall was chosen, not imposed. The women at the cafe knew me only as the lady who loved almond croissants and tipped with a joke. The librarian saved me mysteries. The flower vendor slipped tulips into my basket. None needed my history. They simply offered kindness. That was enough. Closure didn't arrive through confrontation. It arrived in ordinary moments when I realized I had nothing left to prove. One Tuesday, while checking the porch light, I found an envelope slid under my door. Cream cardstock, gold lettering. My name written in Lila's careful hand. I sat at the kitchen table, tea warm in my palms, and stared at it. I already knew. A birthday invitation. For the baby. No note, no apology. Just one line under balloons and pastel moons. "We'd like you to come." No expectations, just presence. Not "we miss you." Not "we were wrong." Just presence. Stripped of sentiment, it somehow said more. Not a plea. Not an olive branch heavy with guilt. A measured reach. I walked to the window. The roses I had once planted for Lila's bouquet still bloomed, stubborn and bright. I thought of Amelia, this child who never asked for the weight of her family's history. Maybe Lila hadn't found words. Maybe she knew none would suffice. This was her gesture. "I don't know how to fix it, but I still want you there." It didn't erase the pain, but it was a beginning, a quiet one. I pinned the card under a sunflower magnet on my fridge, not to decide if I'd go, to decide how. The morning of the party, I pulled out a cardigan, soft blue wool, faint scent of cedar, a gift from Thomas on our 25th anniversary. I hadn't worn it in years. Now it felt grounding. "I'll go as I am," I whispered. Not to be needed, not to be rescued, just to be. The house looked the same, fresh paint on the porch, old cracks still in the steps. I stood for a breath, invitation in one hand, courage in the other, then climbed. The door opened before I knocked. Lila stood there, not styled, not polished, just flats, hair pulled back, smudges beneath her eyes. "Hi," she said. "Hello, Lila." A beat passed. She stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, balloons, pastel banners, children's laughter. Conversations hushed as I entered. No applause, no embrace, just silence and watchful eyes. And that was enough. Daniel appeared, Amelia in his arms, yellow dress, ribbon in her hair. She stared at me, wide-eyed. No judgment, only wonder. "You came," Daniel said. "Yes, thank you for the invitation." We didn't hug, but his eyes softened, just slightly. The living room buzzed with polite chatter, but when I stepped in, the tone shifted. Voices dipped, eyes followed. I didn't mind. I wasn't there for them. I found a quiet corner near the bookshelf I used to dust when they were too busy. I sipped water, not inserting myself, not explaining. Then something unexpected happened. Lila came from the kitchen carrying a teapot. She set down a familiar mug in front of me, white porcelain with a faint blue rim, slightly chipped. Mine, the one that once made her wrinkle her nose. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her hands were steady, deliberate, a gesture in place of words. I wrapped my palms around the cup. Warmth spread through me. Not reconciliation, not absolution, just acknowledgement. Sometimes silence is its own language, especially between women who have both learned to carry pain without spilling it. I didn't linger. Just one cup of tea, a glance at the cake, and a smile at the little girl who now bore my name. Before leaving, I slipped a small card from my purse and placed it on the console by the door. No envelope, no signature. My handwriting clean and certain. Teach her to say thank you and never make someone disappear just because they were kind. Then I walked out quietly. No dramatic exit, no demand to be seen. It was not exile this time. It was choice, a boundary, a lesson. That evening, back in my cottage, I sat at my desk and wrote to Ruth Avery, the woman who had once told me truth in the middle of all my noise. Dear Ruth, you asked me to tell you how it all ended, if there would be a ribbon neatly tied or just threads held by grace. I went to the party. No apologies were spoken, no rewriting of the past, just balloons, a cake, and a child in a yellow dress who didn't know about any of it. She toddled to me, hands sticky, and said, "Hi, Grandma Martha." She didn't ask who I was. She only knew my name, and that, Ruth, was enough. I paused, pen trembling slightly, then wrote on. We wait years for apologies like rain, believing they'll wash us clean. But sometimes they come as wind, gestures, softened eyes, an invitation with no conditions. That's what Lila offered. Not perfection, just presence. And I realized I no longer needed their words to heal. Peace didn't arrive when they understood. It arrived when I stopped needing them to. I signed the letter and set it aside, tears not heavy but gentle, like the sea outside at dusk. The next week I returned to the shelter. Shay handed me a folded page torn from her notebook, a simple crayon drawing of a book with a heart beside it. The words in her uneven script, Miss Martha, you're the first person who believed I could read a whole book. Thank you for waiting. I read it twice before sitting down on the porch steps of the center. She didn't know how many years I had once spent waiting on people who never turned back. But somehow, she understood the part that mattered, that sometimes believing quietly, steadily, is enough to change someone. And sometimes, it's enough to change you. The days in Marigold Bay fell into a rhythm. Mornings with tea and my lemon tree. Afternoons walking along the shore or mentoring girls at the center. Evenings writing notes to myself. Not apologies, not explanations, just records of a life that was finally mine. I no longer measured worth by who called, who visited, who needed me. I stopped scanning birthdays missed or messages never sent. I had learned that being welcomed isn't the same as being wanted, and I would rather build new circles with people who chose me freely than beg for space at a table where I'd once been told to sit near the kitchen. One quiet Tuesday, the mail brought another envelope, not from lawyers this time. Soft cream, handwritten, no return address. I almost left it unopened, but curiosity tugged. Inside was a simple photograph. Amelia, now older than the baby swaddled in that first picture, sitting in a patch of grass with a small book in her lap. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, she asks for stories every night. She knows your name, just that. No plea, No apology, just fact. I pressed the photo to my chest. My name carried forward again, proof that no silence, no dismissal could erase it. At the community center, Shay read her first poem aloud. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. When she finished, she looked at me with a small, fierce pride. "See," I told her, "you stood, and the words stood with you." She smiled, rare, genuine, and in that moment I saw the legacy I wanted. Not houses or deeds, not even names etched in paper, but courage planted like seeds in someone else's life. That evening I pulled out my notebook and wrote one last letter to Ruth Avery. "Dear Ruth, you once told me, people don't change because we keep rescuing them. They change when no one comes. I see it now. Lila and Daniel may shift, may not. That's theirs to carry. Mine is different. I stopped rescuing. I started living. And in that, Ruth, I finally changed myself. There was no neat bow at the end, just a child with my name who said Grandma without hesitation. Just a girl who handed me a crayon heart because I waited. Just a lemon tree that keeps reaching for the sun. Maybe that's enough. More than enough." I signed it, folded it carefully, and set it beside the chipped cup. That night, barefoot on my balcony, I lifted my tea to the sky. Porch lights blinked across the complex, small proofs of lives carrying on. The sea stretched before me, endless and forgiving. For the first time in years, I felt no tug backward, no ache for what could have been, only a quiet certainty. They asked me to disappear. I did, but I reappeared, stronger, visible, whole, and this time I would not be erased. Mornings in Marigold Bay began simply. The kettle whistled in my small kitchen. Sunlight spilled through thin curtains, and I stepped barefoot onto the porch to water the lemon tree. Its leaves glistened, small buds stretching toward the sun. Once I thought survival meant holding up a house with bleeding hands. Now survival meant this, breathing without fear. Neighbors waved from across fences, one with a basket of rosemary, another walking a terrier. None of them knew the full story of who I had been. They only knew I loved books, listened well, and always brought something sweet to community gatherings. That was enough. On Thursdays, I still visited the shelter. The girls waited eagerly. Lena now read whole chapters aloud. Harper talked about studying law. Shay brought a new notebook. She wanted to write poems. "I want someone to read my words the way you read," she told me. I nodded, a calm certainty rising inside me. That was the answer to all my doubts. I was useful again, but never used. Sometimes an envelope appeared in my mailbox, a photo of Amelia in the garden, her first scribbles, a drawing of a son signed, "For Grandma Martha." Daniel didn't write long letters. Lila never apologized out loud. But their gestures were small steps, careful ones. I let them move at their own pace, because now I understood. My life no longer hinged on their recognition. I no longer kept the phone on my nightstand like a lifeline. If it rang, I answered. If not, I had my books, my lemon tree, and an entire world that finally belonged to me. One evening in late October, sitting by the sea, I wrote in my journal, "I didn't return to that family as the woman I once was. I didn't return at all. I built a new one, made of neighbors who leave bread at my door, of girls who learn to read with me, and of a child who carries my name. That is enough to silence the fear of being forgotten. I am no longer invisible. I am a woman who chose herself." I closed the notebook, breathed the salt air, and smiled. That's when I finally understood. The disappearance they demanded had become my rebirth, and in that I found my quietest, fullest victory.